guess some brief background on me. I did start coding when I was 7. And pretty much the venture I'm working on now is a venture-backed firm, or it's working on being a venture-backed firm called Pneumatic Inc. Can't find much about it online right now because it is very stealth mode, as they like to call it in the industry up in Silicon Valley. But I want to basically talk about how I basically took it from an idea and building a business from that, and then pretty much the tenaciousness that you have to be able to go up and present to some of the investors at that Sand Hill Road. It can be quite fun if you look at it in the right light, but it can also be a little trying sometimes. So, of course, there's a picture of me when I was 7, a little embarrassing, so don't share it. But anyway, so I'm sure all of you guys have seen Shark Tank. And one of the things I want to talk about with Shark Tank is a lot of times whenever I tell people about me being an entrepreneur, they see Shark Tank and they go, okay, that's really what it is about. And that is a very good lens into pretty much how entrepreneurs are in the world of entrepreneurship, especially when they're raising funds. Pretty much here, Mark Cuban, I met him at the grocery store, and a lot of things about entrepreneurship is opportunity and basically seizing it. And entrepreneurship will get you out of your comfort zone as fast as humanly possible, I promise you. But when I was meeting with Mark Cuban, I actually did not originally want to go and talk to him or pitch the idea. In fact, a lot of those people around there wanted to pitch him that idea while we were there as well. It wasn't because, I didn't feel like it was worth it, but it's because it's a billionaire. You tend to be a little nervous around them. I actually was able to befriend a lot of the companies he works with, and it was through them that they pretty much just pushed me into him. And of course, that's when you hear people say, use your elevator pitch. About 20 seconds into it, he goes, okay, you have 20 seconds, give me your elevator pitch, go. I think my heart stopped. But anyway, I went through the elevator pitch, and what was 20 seconds, it turned into about 20 minutes. And it was quite interesting. It was quite an interesting experience. As one of the main reasons it was very interesting, the reason I put that picture up there, is because it was a little sad to me that a lot of people had ideas, but they didn't feel comfortable enough to share it with Mark Cuban. I mean, they could have easily gotten funded, but they just didn't feel like it. And I mean, even after I presented, and so one of the main things I want to get across to people is, the thing about investors, if you run into an investor who focuses on your age too much, which they do with me, or if they say, if they're very critical, or if they start literally screaming at you, that's probably not the right investor, because the investor that's going to be good for a company going forward, especially us being young entrepreneurs. You want one that is willing to work with you and go through the bad days. But anyway, that was just a brief diversion. On the next slide, I have some things about where it came from. So we talk about ideas and where it comes from. Entrepreneurship is a lot about listening and reacting. And listening and reacting, you typically start off with an idea of what you think is going to be a good opportunity in the industry. And this is actually me starting out with Pneumatic. That's the Internet of Things company that's really actually trying to push everyone to Internet of Everything. Those are fun terms to use in marketing, but really what it means is we're trying to combine people, process, and connected things to make a very intelligent household or consumer. And through that, we're trying to basically take everything away from controlling your TV and stuff on your phone to it just helping you out as you go. So this is the very early version of it. And of course, from those notes to the next slide, that's actually what it turned into. A lot of people try to think that entrepreneurship happens very instantly. That was about a period of 3 months from just planning and designing to actually getting a good proof of concept done. That is very, very embarrassing for me to see up there now because, of course, that's a long time ago. But then after we started seeing in the market, putting the proof of concept out there, seeing how many people might be willing to have this installed in their homes, we found that there was actually a really good opportunity in this market. And that's one of the other things you have to focus on with entrepreneurship. I used to go with the idea of if you just create something good, it will come. But a lot about entrepreneurship is execution. You have to be able to have not just the differentiations, but the execution and the strategy to bring it to market. And so after we figured that out, we started thinking more of what it could be as our first marketable product. And on the next slide after that, that is, you can tell the amount of notes increased tenfold. February of this year, we actually started designing the first marketable version of this product. And from there, that's when you start talking to investors, maybe some angels. The differentiating factor between an angel and a venture-backed person is an angel actually has their own cash that they're investing. And it's not in the millions, it's typically under $1 million in the Dallas market or in Silicon Valley. Of course, their cost of living drives that up just a bit. And so that's the kind of ideas we were talking about, people trying to make sure we're on the right track. You don't want to waste your time. And then from there, we did realize that that was actually the right place to go. And so from there, it developed into the next slide is our actual full alpha. It's actually continuing to change from there. So yeah, I know it's just a little blurry, but that's basically what it's developed into. So you know, you can kind of, I was giving a speech the other day to a class about how you start with coding, and a lot about business is you start small and you just continue building it and building it. You don't start with something that's, man, if you don't start out saying, I want to build Google. No, you start out saying, I want to build this, and then that's going to reach this, and then you eventually build it into something that becomes Google. One of the things I wanted to make, I guess, aware about this is, of course, that looks severely different from our proof of concept time frame that we were designing stuff. It's excellent to read books about people like Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs and Google founders and all these people, because it's a great way to find their failures and their problems and see how they approached it and also how they worked around it. But there is no set blueprint for anyone to start a business. It is all about listening and reacting. And so a lot of times it's great to look at their failures, but realize the business you're seeing today is just a very modified version of what they started with. It may not even look originally how they started it. And so that's basically what it's developed into so far. In fact, the current version on my phone is a lot different from that. So, but on the next slide, from there, of course, you have to have something to run it on, and that's what we did first off the hardware. I cannot tell you guys how fun it is to have your name or your company's name on a box. It really helps you realize that you're building something that someone will eventually want to buy and stuff. So just a brief pause on that slide. On the next one, we talk about Google. So as we start getting more into what an entrepreneur is like, going back to my history, I started coding when I was 7, yes, and I originally started out with an electronic medical records company. I quickly learned people do not like to give a 10-year-old their medical records. So I actually had to sell that source code off to someone. But one of the main points I wanted to share from learning that experience is we had some advisors who had been CEOs of companies. There are differentiators between a CEO and founder. The CEO is the person who's running the company, the founder is the original person who started the company. And this person, while he was the CEO and he gave us excellent ideas, I kind of just took it verbatim for what he said and did almost everything that he said we would do. Well, that was not a good plan because later on I learned he was in the textile industry, not medical, and there are quite a few differences, especially when you're talking about a startup. And so the main point I want to get across with that is when you're receiving advice as a young entrepreneur trying to get into the entrepreneurship business realm, always qualify the advice you're getting it from. Try to see the perspective that someone's telling you about where they're going. But in terms of the Google slide, one of the things that one of the investors has told me very early on is entrepreneurs are almost crazy. Why are we crazy? Well, because almost every single one of you, if you have a passion to drive to be an entrepreneur, you could pretty much walk up to Google or any other company and get a 6-figure check. Well, that's not what entrepreneurship is about. In fact, it's about as far from making money as possible as the real driving factor. It's more because you see a change that can be made, you want to drive that change, and you think you can make it happen. And that is the real differentiator between being an entrepreneur and just getting a nice check from someone like Google. But I say that because when I was in San Francisco area, of course you have to tour Google, you want to see how it looks. And they kept trying to hire me. And I'm going, that's not what drives me, honestly. So, but yeah. And while we were in San Francisco, we also had the opportunity to meet with one of Paul Allen's friends. That was another more interesting experience. But one of the other things he gave us that I wanted to make sure I shared with you guys is that innovators are really awesome, but the main thing that can almost trip almost everyone up is timing. So what is the greatest example of this in the real world? Because it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. Well, MySpace to Facebook is kind of an example of that. Because MySpace came out back when, I think it came out when it was during dial-up. And that's not really good if something's supposed to be with you every single step of the way, trying to update people about what's going on. Flash forward a few years, then you have Facebook. So MySpace was actually the product of just being a bit too early to the market, and their timing was wrong, whereas Facebook, he saw the opportunity and the timing was right. That's just a small, minor example of timing, because a lot of times with companies, it's kind of like the universe. If you're trying to look very far into the past about when it was first created, or through the Big Bang, as scientists are currently saying, there's a certain point that you can't see beyond, and that's really what companies are afforded. You can't really see what's going on in their mind before it's in the public eye. Such as us right now, not many people can see us in the public eye because we're intentionally keeping ourselves still. So that's kind of the general gist about where companies are going and stuff, but now we need to talk about the bad days, because it's great to have meetings in San Francisco and on Sand Hill, but what happens when stuff happens? So like on the next slide, one of the funny things that I found in San Francisco is this is a very common mantra. If it happens, just pick it up and move on. And that really is true. When you start with a company, like when you saw me drafting that alpha of our product, it's really nice to have so many people saying, hey, yeah, that's awesome. I could get you 50 to 100 homes right off the bat. You're going to have a couple $100 million valuation by the end of the year. That's great, but there's all these little speed bumps in the road. And that's why they have that mantra pretty much all the way throughout the city of, the bad stuff happens. Even if you plan for it, worse stuff will happen. And so the real drive about an entrepreneur, regardless of if you make it before you're 20, 30, or 40, is to just keep trying, because you will eventually get there if you keep trying. Don't try to limit yourself on comparing what others have done, what time frame they've gotten there on, or what age. So anyway, but I think that's pretty much it, unless I have another slide. Oh yeah, I just got that this morning. That is what people say an entrepreneur is, and I actually tend to agree with them a lot about that. You have to believe anything's possible. You can't doubt yourself right off the gate, or you're pretty much going to fail. So you have to believe in yourself to start. But yeah. Anyway.
So now we're going to take a quick tea break. So there's tea and snacks, and then when we come back, we'll have